Hi, my name is Dave, and I've been part of the Cafe RE community for nearly 3 years now. I showed up broken, lost, and uncertain of how I was going to stay sober. But when I regularly started attending the Cafe RE Zoom meetings, I found such a warm, welcoming, and caring community full of the type of people who will listen when I need help and who will lean on me when they need help. I learned so much about myself and how to recover from my addiction, all at the same time making lifelong friends. For me, the Cafe RE community was the missing piece to my sobriety puzzle. If you'd like to check out the community, go to www.cafe-re.org and enter the promo code CONNECT for your first month free. Again, that's cafe-re.org and use the code CONNECT for your first month free. I hope to see you there.
Recovery Elevator episode 589.
I feel stronger than I've ever felt. I feel more clear in my head space, and in my heart space, I feel as though there's just a lot more possibility.
Welcome to the Recovery Elevator podcast. My name is Paul Churchill, and this is how we quit. On today's episode, we have Brooke. She's 55 years old from Denver, Colorado, and she took her last drink of alcohol on February 17th, 2026. Great job, Brooke. Hey, we get about 10 to 15 interview requests per episode, right? And only one person is on the podcast doing an interview. So if you've emailed us to be on the podcast or even sent info@recoveryelevator.com an email, I want you all to know that we read everything, but if we don't reply, don't take it personal. We get a lot of emails, and it seems like as of late, we've had double or triple the amount of submissions to be interviewed on the podcast. So just know that. And how cool is it that so many people want to share their story with one goal in mind? That's to help somebody else quit drinking. That is the most badass thing that I've ever heard of, and that is why we're still doing this almost 600 weeks after the first episode launched on, what was the date? February 25th, 2015. Okay, let's get started. So we are putting together a book called This Is How We Quit. It's a compilation of stories of just that, how people quit drinking. And we're hoping to have this book out in July. Yeah, you'll hear from us if you're on the email list, and I'll mention it on the podcast. But we had 66 submissions, and they are all incredible. Myself and our editing team, a gal Danielle, we're reading all of them. And my gosh, the hardest part about this is going to be narrowing it down. Our goal is 18 to 20 submissions. So if you're listening and you have submitted and it didn't make the book, my gosh, just know that they're all so good, and it's going to be a challenge to select that. But I was reading one this morning, and it was from a gal named Kristi, who was interviewed on this podcast, episode 492. And there was a paragraph that I asked her if I could share with you guys, and I'll read it for you right now. Here we go. She goes, I started noticing simple things I had never really paid attention to before, like the way wind moved through the trees, how quiet everything gets at sunset, just being outside in general. It started to feel like I was reconnecting to something I had been completely disconnected from for a long time. I became fascinated with plants and how they communicate with their leaves and posture. Birds are the same. I'll sit outside for hours and listen to them communicate with one another. There's even a fox that shows up out back some mornings, and I swear we've got some kind of understanding at this point. I know how that sounds, and I'm okay with it. One major realization I've had in sobriety is that we aren't just standing on the outside of nature looking in. We're a part of it. We weren't created to do life disconnected from everything around us. We were designed to be in relationship, not just with people, but with nature too. And once I started paying attention to that, it changed the way I experience everything. Thank you, Kristi. Wow, I love that so much. So the opposite of addiction is connection, and the opposite of connection is disconnection, and disconnection from nature may be one of the most unspoken contributors to addiction and suffering in our world today. The second most important relationship in your life, that is built into your DNA is with Mother Nature and all the animals and plants. The first relationship is with your mom. Again, the second one is with nature. The third is with your dad. The fourth is with your community, your tribe. And the fifth is, I don't know, it could be a Slurpee. Let's not go too far in the weeds here. So back to what Kristi wrote. She talks about the little things that she notices. Now, there's a famous Nietzsche line, 16th, 17th century German philosopher, maybe even later than that. But he says, in a rare moment of stillness, how little suffices for happiness, right? And that's what we're all going after, is joy and happiness in life. And we think we got to go across the globe, but Kristi's in her backyard finding it. It's incredible. And the last line here is huge. Let me say it again. Once I started paying attention, it changed the way I experience everything. If you pay attention, give all your energy and focus into one thing, you're present. And if you're noticing plants communicating through postures and leaves, yeah, you're big time in the present moment. And once you're present in life, as Kristi says, everything changes. Thank you, alcohol addiction, for that gift. Could it be this simple? Again, that is a snippet of a submission for our upcoming book, This Is How We Quit, which is a compilation of recovery stories. And that submission has my vote, but there's a team of us who are going to vote on the final submissions. All right, I hope you enjoyed that snippet from Kristi. Before we hear from Brooke, I want to mention this episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Let's talk how to thrive instead of just surviving this summer. For some, summer is the best season. Barbecues, camping, the sun's out later, the kids are out of school. For others, it can be tough. The kids are out of school. You got to juggle it all. And this can lead to overwhelm, and you're counting down the minutes until the kids are back in school. So the seed I want to plant with you at the beginning of summer is to take care of yourself. Put yourself first. And a great way to do that is therapy, to talk it out. We believe in BetterHelp, what they're doing. That's why we've been partnering with them for over 5 years. They've got over 1.7 million client reviews with an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 stars. You don't have to say yes to everything this summer. Find support and therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/elevator. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/elevator. Brooke, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you today, Paul?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for asking. Brooke, let's get right into this. When was your last drink?
My last drink was on February 17th, 2026, on the Chinese New Year.
Yeah,
great
right.
Opportunity to show up to life differently the day after.
For sure. Yeah. So you're a couple months away from alcohol at the time of the recording. How do you feel, Brooke?
Outstanding.
Love it. One word, plain and simple, outstanding. Well, I can't wait to hear more about your story, Brooke. But before we do so, give listeners a little bit more background about yourself. This is where you're from, your age, where you're calling in from, maybe what your professional or family life look like. And then what do you like to do for fun?
Well, I'm from Denver, Colorado, and I currently live here. I have a husband of 25 years. I have 2 sons that are 18 and 20. Kind of your ordinary person doing life. I have a background in education as both a teacher and a leader. And for fun, I love to be outside. We hike, we ski, we like to go for walks, and I play a ton of tennis.
What did you teach?
Well, you kind of name it, but it was economics, macro, micro, Spanish, and English.
At the high school level?
At the high school level, the best. Kids are the greatest.
Okay. Listeners, you can't see Brooke. I can. We're on Zoom. But when we first logged on, there was a teacher presence, and I would feel very comfortable in a classroom with you, Brooke. So I'm sure you were, yeah, I'm sure you've guided several students and taught and led, and that's awesome. I mean, that's neat. Have you ever tried pickleball?
There's 2 kind of people in the world, Paul. There's those who play tennis and those who play pickleball. I'm kidding. No, I have not. But I will eventually, as soon as I can't play tennis as well as I do.
I recall a couple of years ago, someone on this podcast saying the exact same thing. There's like this fun built-in animosity between the two, and you're never going to switch. Stay loyal to your sport. Pickleball versus tennis. Yeah, I think my pickleball days are coming soon.
Nice.
In the near future, and I'm looking forward to it. Where do you like to get outside in Colorado? Let's not give any secret trails and stuff, but where do you
Ah,
go to recreate and get outside
well,
in nature?
it's such a great question because it depends on how much time you have. So if I'm looking for something that just I can get to easily accessible in 30 minutes, there's all kinds of hikes in the Front Range, Golden State Park up there. It's not too bad to get to Rocky Mountain National Park, and then also down south a little bit. And then if you have more time, it's great to head into the high country where you need to be there early and you'll probably end up leaving late. So we have just such a variety out here. It's pretty awesome.
When I was 15 years old, I got a scholarship to do Outward Bound. It was a 21-day backpacking trip, which took place behind Aspen and Snowmass, the ski resorts,
Mm.
in the Maroon Bells Wilderness. And it was challenging. It rained 18 out of the 21 days, and not just like a sprinkle here or there. But oh my gosh, we didn't see anybody for 21 days, just us. There was 8 of us and 2 guides. Incredible experience. And I think it almost paved the way for my sobriety process to, hey, Paul, get into nature. Your nervous system will thank you. So, all right. Well, Brooke, I'm excited to hear your story. I'm going to turn it over to you. Let's do this. I'll jump in with questions. Let's roll.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Instead of taking us way back to the very beginning, I just thought I'd start with like the headliner, which was I grew up believing that alcohol was a necessary part of living. So I saw my parents drink casually. I saw just a lot of social environments where drinking was just kind of the given. So my first drink was in high school. I drank through high school. I went to a college where, drinking was just part of the socializing. I drank as a young adult professional. I think the theory there was that's how we connect. That's how we get to know each other and build community, which is, I think, what we're all looking for. So that Friday afternoon club, if you will, was a thing. I drank as an older adult professional. And I say professional because I think there's a lot of stress that comes with working and raising children and maintaining a marriage and maintaining a house and having parents and trying to keep myself together in the midst of all of it. So I think there was this sense of, oh, a glass of wine will always be the point of relief. And I deserve it, right? I wind down after a day. So I'm hard pressed to imagine a time when I didn't think drinking was normalized. And I would drink for celebration, drink for grieving. I come from a community where, the wake, the good old Catholic wake was a thing, man. It was the throwdown after an extent of death. And then into my 40s, I noticed that it wasn't so easy to get up the next day without some sort of headache or to be tired. And we're talking like the 1 or 2 drinks a night, not conceiving that as a problem, right? It's that I've come home from work. It's kind of a way to kick your shoes off and let your hair down. It's a way in which my husband and I can connect after a busy day. So in my 40s is when I started to also notice that my body was not responding as well in terms of joint aches. So not only waking up the next day and having a little bit of a headache, but all the things that result from drinking alcohol, poor sleep, increased inflammation. I started to question. Is this really helpful? Now, this is the same period of time where there was quite a bit of information out there about alcohol actually being an elixir, especially red wine, right? This resveratrol, like if you drink red wine, it's really helping. There's something positive about the longevity piece of this. So I was curious about that. I did start to venture into the whole sober curious piece of sobriety because I follow a number of doctors, functional medicine doctors, who are questioning the use of alcohol.
Brooke, earlier you mentioned that alcohol you felt was a necessary part of living, a necessary part of life. And I felt the same way. It's a cultural paradigm in America and probably across the globe that alcohol goes hand in hand with life. And it's not to our own fault. It's marketed that way. There's brilliant people put in corporations there to disseminate a message that alcohol will enhance your life. And so when you commented a bit on this, you question the role of it as you're in your 40s, your joints are starting to hurt, but it's also going against internally the paradigm that, wait, alcohol is good for you and it's part of life. Was there in like an internal battle there for a while saying, wait, my experience isn't adding up to what I have been told about this?
Absolutely. Because I would do these cleanses that were either 10 or 30 days. This is all just in pursuit of trying to figure out how to better support my health. I would find that I felt unbelievably better from stepping away from alcohol in its entirety. And then I also felt the internal struggle that you're pointing to, which was, how am I going to show up in all of these social spaces, all of these ways in my life without alcohol? I don't have that skill set developed. I don't have that mindset that that is even an option because it was so normalized.
Were there repercussions, Brooke? Like, I'm having trouble shutting it down after a couple drink, spending more on alcohol than you'd like. Maybe you're recognizing family members or close members, friends and family aren't drinking as much as you.
I would say to you, I had that question come up frequently of, do I really need another? Or I would come home after, book club, for example. I'd pour myself another at book club and I'd come home and say, God, it's always that last drink. It's that last drink that really does you in. It disrupts your sleep. It makes you dehydrated, gives you the headache.
And so when did you mentally land at, okay, alcohol is not good for me? And was there also a direction of, hey, we're gonna quit or we're gonna moderate? Or what was that like after that?
Well, I think in the last 6 years, and I've heard this from a lot of folks that you've had on your podcast, there was something that shifted during COVID. I think that it was like living in the upside down. And I do remember in there when the county of Denver designated out liquor stores as a necessary business, like an essential business. The thought was like, wow, what is this? Why is that? Do we really need more alcohol as we're all by ourselves for the most part at home with our families? So I do think that that started to make me wonder. And then my own lived experience without alcohol. And the other piece of it, my mom was diagnosed with cancer and was on a cancer journey. And you can't be on the cancer journey and not start to question alcohol because of the fact that cancer loves sugar. And alcohol, then we also know, in no form is healthy for the human body or tissue. So every practitioner in her world was saying, no alcohol, no alcohol, no alcohol. And so it started to, the wheels are really turning. I'm like, the medical community knows this. That's when I did my deep dive. And I just thought, there's nothing good about this, except I don't know behaviorally, mentally, how to step away because it's been such a habit, namely in the form of stress relief.
Brooke, when did that line land in your body? You just said, look, alcohol in no form in any amount is good for you. So February 17th of this year, 2026 was your last drink. Was it a couple years ago or was it during COVID, like 4 years ago? When did that land?
In the last year. I
Okay.
would say in the last year, I had to come back from some surgeries, namely orthopedic in nature. And I just thought, I have to help myself. And this can't be good. And all the research is there. The slow ethanol drip is not healthy in any way, shape, or form. So
Yeah.
I've been wrestling with this question for a while. And then February 17th, I just was in the midst of getting over shingles, as a matter of fact. And I was like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. And I have been done.
I want to go back and comment on COVID and it shined the light on the role that alcohol was playing. Number one, yeah, I was astonished that liquor stores were deemed essential businesses. So many people were. But he unpacked that for a second. If people don't have their juice, their sauce, their medicine to placate the cells in the body, people would be detoxing in hospital beds that were needed for COVID patients, right? It's like, wow, that is incredible in a really unfortunate way. It also showed the power of community. And when we don't have community, alcohol aside, it wreaks havoc on the cellular makeup of a human body. And it's neat to see the paradigm of alcohol, what has happened in the last 10 years, being completely disbanded. Big alcohol has lost almost $1 trillion in the last 5 years. And I think what really put the nail in the coffin is Andrew Huberman Lab's podcast. Did you hear that episode a couple of years
Oh,
ago?
yeah. Oh, yeah. Forever
Yeah.
changed. Yeah.
I think it was in 2023, what alcohol does to your mind, body, health, spirit, something like that. And it was an hour and a half of straight facts from a Stanford neuroscientist. And he was just like, yo, it's not good for you. Just like you said, Brooke, in any format. So, Brooke, was it more like a realization of like, this is just not good for me? You mentioned shingles, and yes, alcohol and shingles, that's not going to go in a healing direction. Or was there a rock bottom around February 17th?
I feel, Paul, less about a rock bottom and more of, I'm done with the exhaustion of this. The constant inner dialogue around some, but not enough. And if I have a tall with only one shot versus two drink, I mean, the constant negotiating.
Constant negotiation, what you just laid out. I know there were so many shaking heads, always thinking, all right, how much am I going to have to drink tonight? Is tonight going to be the night to drink? And I shut it down after two. What do I have tomorrow morning? That is so much mental bandwidth that doesn't start when we start drinking. It starts upon the awakening. And when we remove alcohol within just a couple weeks, I was like, holy cow, what's up, Jimmy Cliff? I can see clearly now because the alcohol is gone. I could think about so much more things. What was that process like, though? It can be a challenge for many people. Was it you realized it and I'm done, adios, sayonara, alcohol, or was it a challenge?
Certainly there's a physical component of withdrawal, right? And I'm not talking like the super shakes and need to be in a treatment center, which for those folks, I give the shout out because it's difficult. And for me, it was also a social, emotional, like, how am I going to show up in my life without this being a habit? That initial 3 days, I know this from doing cleanses away from sugar or away from gluten or whatever, namely sugar and caffeine, is tough. And there's headaches. And I have to say to you that I coached myself around being kind to myself. And I cleared my calendar and I drank more water and I took more vitamins. And I just said to myself, this is going to be hard for a little while until it's then easier.
Can you expand on being kind to yourself? You said you cleared your calendar and was kind to yourself. Please unpack that a bit more for us, Brooke, because that's one of the biggest challenges into getting sober, into making any change in life, of giving yourself grace. And you first had to recognize, Brooke, there might have been a voice that perhaps was a little strong, a little formidable to the self.
Yeah, because I think there's this voice too that says, you're capable, you're strong. Why can't you just get over it? This is not that hard. People do this stuff all the time. It's all that chatter. And then I have to just lean into my own internal wisdom to know, like, the way I'm going to get through this is to lean in and to hold myself like I would one of my children when they're in distress or sick or working at healing. This whole self-compassion piece was informed by Dr. Kristen Neff's work. Like, this was something that came into my world in the last couple of years, and it was foreign to me because I'm a type A, I'm a driver. And I'm like, oh, to slow down and actually hold myself in such a way that I would somebody else I love. Why is that such like a difficult concept to wrap my head around? And so in that, like, eating well, wearing comfy clothes, like not packing my calendar, not feeling like I have to be the human doing, but I actually could be a human being for that period of time.
I love that line. Brooke, could you go back a bit? I think you used the word exhausted or exhaustion. And the phrase that came to my mind was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I ask people what's their rock bottom, and it's quite common on this podcast to not hear a fiery rock bottom with car crashes or jail time or prison time. But probably more common to hear, look, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, sick of negotiating with myself, sick of making promises to myself that I later broke the next week, the weekend, or the same day.
There's an awareness of needing to change. You know something needs to change. And I think when you hold in your belief system that alcohol is a necessity, right, it's ingrained, that's the last thing you look at. At least this has been my experience. I will look at my nutrition. I will look at my movement. I'll look at my sleep. I look at my calendar. But the last question to really come to the forefront is like, what about the alcohol? What about the relationship with alcohol? And so for me, it boiled down to this factor of, I'm going to step into this space and imagine and live life without this and not be afraid. Because I will tell you, Paul, this journey oftentimes involves, you probably realize and have recognized this, fear, right? Of like, I don't know who I'm going to be. How am I going to be in the world if I don't have this habit? And I'm not going to get rid of all my friends, and I'm not getting rid of my family. I'm not going to stop showing up in places that have also filled my heart and built community. I'm just now going to have to do it in a different way. And part of it comes in believing that I can and I will learn. And there are so many resources to help with that. I'm not doing this by myself.
Brooke, you said something I want to unpack. You said this was the last thing to look at regarding alcohol.
Yeah.
So much data has presented itself after 589 weeks. And almost everybody, the last thing they look at is alcohol. They lie to therapists, can't be the alcohol. Part of it is going against the paradigm, the messaging that alcohol is good for you. will help your cardiovascular health. It does not. So you got to go against that. Years of messaging and TV commercials, advertisements, film, all that stuff. But it's the last thing. So listeners, if there's somebody out there going, well, maybe it's my sugar intake, bump alcohol a little higher up on the priority of what to investigate. Talk to us about stepping into the unknown just a little bit more. There are some concepts with humanity and behavior that are just baffling. And sometimes we would prefer a life with anxiety, depression, riddled with hangovers throughout the week than stepping into a life without alcohol. How'd you do that? How'd you step into it?
Educating myself is a big piece of this. I tend to go that direction and read research. I also have been very moved by the neuroscience in all of this. So what is happening for my central nervous system when I'm, dysregulated? And what do I want to do to bring myself down or rise myself up? And that just awareness right there of what do I need to do to steady myself has been a huge piece of this. And of course, our ancient traditions have pointed to meditation, to yoga, to prayer, right? To being in nature, to your point in the beginning, like there's so many things that can help heal us and bring us into that steady state. And I just have to recognize in my own body what's coming up for me in certain situations that in the past I may have grabbed alcohol. Again, celebration, grief, happiness, sadness. But instead, it's paying attention to like what's happening here. And then knowing that I can steady myself through these other practices and these habits, which long-term are going to be beneficial.
It sounds like the alcohol addiction propelled you into the study of life, right? I'm gonna start investigating this. You said something earlier I want to cover. You said there was an awareness that something needs to change. We're going to zoom way out here for a second. I think addiction in general, and we're here talking about alcohol, but there are infinite amount of addictions. I think it serves such a powerful purpose in the development and the biological advancement of humanity because it's building awareness that's coming not from the mind. Because in the mind, there was part of me, it's like, damn, I want to drink. And another part was like, dude, Paul, no, we want to be the best version of ourselves. But the part of us that really forces us into sobriety is not either one of those voices. That's like the good wolf and the bad wolf. It's the awareness that something is off. And that awareness, if we usually point to it, it's not like, hey, I'm pointing to right above my temple on the logical side of my brain. It's right here. It's in the heart space. There's something deeper inside of us that's saying, yo, Brooke, yo, Paul, something is out of balance. And unfortunately, alcohol is the last thing to be uncovered and the last thing to be discovered and explored. But that is what an addiction does. It forces us to move the seat of our self out of the head, out of the ego. We're not a good person. We're not a bad person. We're just a human being opposed to a human doing. And I think all of this is going to go back to return to our roots, just like you said, to meditation and focusing on ourselves and getting out in nature. And I said this last episode, it just keeps swirling in my mind. And with Native Americans, they said to first heal a person, you must first heal their relationship with the land. What does that mean? I can't really tell you. But the basic steps with that would be to get outside and start listening to yourself. And I walked outside about a week ago and I said, oh, the brewer's blackbirds are back. This is the second most common bird in my yard besides the American robin. And they migrate. They're not here in the wintertime. And that stuff, like I didn't even know what a brewer's blackbird was when I was drinking. My body was not in tune with the natural cycles. How has your relationship with perhaps planet Earth or nature changed since quitting drinking?
Well, I do think there's an increased awareness, to use that term. I just think I see things and hear things and smell things that I may not have when there's kind of a shadow over all of that. I think my senses are heightened, and I think that is a part of this, which can be a real invitation. And it's also a little bit scary too, because it's also heightened awareness of when I'm feeling unhappy or distressed or mostly afraid. But then the other side of that is the joy of hearing the bird songs and downloading the app where then I can walk and listen to different, I can name, if you will, the different bird calls.
You got a notification from Merlin on your phone right now. I can see it. You see it?
Yes. Yes.
One of the best sobriety apps out there, the Merlin Bird app. Keep going.
Yeah, the best. And so just being present fully and totally for me has been the great gift in the counterpoint against anxiety, which is been very much a root cause of my drinking habits. So to show up in these other spaces, which calm down my nervous system and bring me forward to my best self, to use your term too, it's just a gift. But nature is the place.
How do you regulate your nervous system? How do you bring yourself into a state of calm now that alcohol is no longer an option?
A ton of breath work. In the past, I didn't even know that like I would be having an anxiety response by shortening my breath, but not even taking a full breath. So a lot of just the breath work that comes with even just basic box breathing. You don't have to, do a whole course in breath work even. Of course, in that is yoga and moving my body in such a way that it helps the blood to flow and my cells to be oxygenated. I am a prayerful person, so I also can stop and pray and ask for support and ask for help or just to calm myself down. I mean, one of my favorite prayers is just help me. It's not more complicated than that.
Can you explain box breathing, maybe for some of those who are not familiar with that yet?
Yeah, it's just, I guess it originates with the military. It's what I had read years ago, where you're just imagining breathing in for 5, holding it, breathing out for 5, holding it. So you're going around a box basically with 5
Five, 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 five.
second
Yeah.
intervals. Super easy. It just kind of puts your brain in a space where you're thinking maybe a little more analytically if you can't get yourself to that heart space. And that has been super helpful. Or just take a deep breath and breathe out slowly.
I'm guessing the military took that one from India or the yogis. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
think
if you're in a trench, you need to calm down. You can either pop a pill or, hey, box breathing is going to get you there in the long run. You dropped a word earlier, I don't know, 2 minutes ago. The word was invitation. I think when an addiction takes hold, there's part of it that wants to double down. I can outthink this. I will live in my thinking mind until I figure this out. No problem, Brooke. Just wake up earlier, work harder. But this is an invitation. You are being called to grow in such a beautiful manner. And not everybody answers the invitation. And if you're on the call thinking like, oh, is that me? Yes, you are. You're listening to a sobriety podcast 100%. When did you recognize it was an invitation for major personal growth? And it's not an invitation to make more money, to be more successful. It's almost an invitation to land more with the awareness within yourself in a deeper seated self. Talk to us a bit more about the invitation for you.
when wanting change, knowing that that is afoot, right? That I want something to shift. I'm looking for a shift in my life. The invitation for me came as I started to put together my thinking brain, right? My analytical brain around there's no case to build here that alcohol is good in any instance, combined with I'm looking to invite in opportunity and possibility in some ways that I've never known because I've never not known a life without alcohol. So I came across a quote, and it may have been a Brene Brown quote when she wrote about her ongoing sobriety, that it is her superpower. And I'm sure this is out there elsewhere, right? That, that being alcohol free is a superpower. That's fascinating. So the invitation to step into that, might this be a superpower that I just didn't know was untapped in this thing about it not being the absence of something, but the presence of these other things? Felt really incredible. Like, wow, this could be a total invitation.
Incredible work Brene Brown has done in general and in the sobriety space. And addiction is the ultimate equalizer. It is the humbler of a lifetime. I think it's Matthew 5:5. It says, blessed are the meek who will inherit the world. And I've heard that translated several times where meek is the humble, right? Blessed are the humble or the egoless who will inherit the world. And addiction is a great way to destroy the ego. Because if you quit drinking, you have to see the ego. You don't beat the ego. You don't overcome it. You don't break it into a million pieces. You see it from afar. You split from it. And that's the power of an addiction. The healing potency of an addiction is force us to split from the ego and say, whoa, that's not me. I'm going to go outside and listen to the birds. Brooke, you're 2.5 months in. Box breathing, meditation, getting out in nature. What other resources have helped you along this way? You said your therapist recommended this podcast, so you're in talk therapy, right? You're talking about it. Tell us more.
I wish everybody could be in therapy because I feel like it's a class in yourself, right? It's a course in who you are and where you've been. I mean, what a gift. I've also been reading a lot of the, everything AA. I think it's very helpful. I think the 12 steps are helpful, even if you're feeling like you're not trying to battle an addiction. Talk about humility and accountability and just putting ourselves in touch with our own interior life. I, of course, read a lot of other books. I do think Quit Like a Woman has been very helpful. I know she's critical of AA in a number of ways. And I'm very open to all the ways in which we show up in this space. I don't think there's the one right way. I also have been very fascinated just by functional medicine. I do read a lot about the human body and the ways in which it responds to substances. So that keeps me going because in that headspace, I know that alcohol is just not okay. It's just not in any way, shape, or form. So that helps. And that I think is also attribute that to Annie Grace, because I think she's also given us a lot of forward information. And I did do her 30-day deal several years ago on my sobriety curiosity quest. And I think the Bible. I am a devout believer in the fact that there is a higher power. I happen to name my higher power a certain way, but I don't believe I'm intergalactic stardust just floating around. I think there's a purpose. So I continue to just infuse myself with stories like those that are on your podcast, Paul, and to just be in the world in such a way that I'm alcohol free. And there's a whole and vast community of people out there on the same journey.
Earlier, you said something about not doing this alone. You can't do it alone. Don't want to do this alone. Talk to us about that alcohol-free community and how it's helped you.
Well, I do want to give a shout out here for these ladies that I've gotten to know through Sober Moms. It's an AA group here. And these women kick ass. These are women younger with younger kids. And I look to them and I think, my gosh, if I'd known what they know and are doing what they're doing 20 years ago, I just give them absolute props. I do also show up in my other social spaces and I just don't drink. And that's okay. There's non-alcoholic options and I don't have to drink to belong, which is also the question I was entering. Like, am I only going to be valuable to these folks in this community if I'm also partaking? And the answer to that is no. That was just a story I was telling myself. So I do feel like I have community and I don't feel alone. And I think that's the biggest piece, right? Is to counter that lie that somehow you'll be alone in the world as an alcohol-free individual. I made that way more of a bigger deal than it really was because there are so many alcohol-friendly options, but there's also lots of folks that don't even think about it anymore. You can show up as you are. And it was all in my head about being alienated or not belonging, which is the greatest need we have. And that was not the truth. That is not reality. That was my fear and anxiety showing up to prevent me from being bold and courageous in those spaces that I just didn't know how to be before.
Brooke, you've mentioned fear a couple times in this interview. I don't know anything about it. I don't experience fear. Just kidding. Major doses of that in my life, and it's a healthy thing. Without fear, animals die. This has been proved many times. You can remove the amygdala in monkeys, and without a fear response and pain, yeah, you need it. It's necessary. You had a great line in the email you sent me a couple weeks ago, inviting the tiger to tea. Explain that for us, please.
Yeah, I riffed that from a girlfriend of mine. It's just the idea of like facing what is my biggest fear and then what, right? And then what? If I show up at a party and I'm not drinking in a space I have for years, then what? And if somebody says something, then what? Like running through, like, what's going to happen is I'm going to be okay. I'm not going to die. I think this inviting the tiger to tea, instead of turning my back toward it and pretending it's not really a fear, it's to lean in and be curious and to listen and wonder and challenge my perception about why do I think that that is the truth? And in fact, it is 9 times out of 10 not really even the case. It's just the perception of what might happen. It's not even what really is happening.
I think the greatest biological fear we have that's in our DNA as humans is to be alone, loneliness, to be rejected from the pack, the herd, the tribe. It is so painful. And I think that's one of the largest obstacles we must overcome. We think, oh, when we quit drinking, I won't have a community. I think 99% of human beings are just good people. I do. Same thing with dogs and animals. I think just everything under the sun has a really good nature to them. They're going to want the best for you. Sure, some might leave, and alcohol's been a great filter for that. It's removed people in my life, very few of them. And I heard a line that it takes a long time to make close friends, and I agree with, but not in sobriety, not in recovery. The community, day one, you can have a new best friend for life. It's so rad. How have you noticed how connections can be built fast when we open about alcohol?
It brings you to this authentic space more quickly than the superficial. I think these are folks that are leaning into their lives in really, again, brave and courageous ways, and they're facing the truth of why it is they had the habit or the addiction that they've had. There's something very genuine and very raw. And I don't mean in that unboundaried like weirdness, but more of just the fact that this is just authentic. These folks are authentic. And we're all on the same quest, which is also unifying. And I think I'm constantly astounded at people's stories and how incredibly courageous they are and bravehearted, I think is the word that I was thinking about the other day as well.
Where are your children, ages 18 and 20? Are they on board? Do they know you're doing a podcast interview right now on a sobriety podcast? Are they like, hell yeah, mom? Or they're like, mom, it wasn't that bad. We had no idea. Where are they at with this?
I mean, they've seen us drink what we would consider be normally drink, right? We have wine in the house. They've never seen us blacked out or slurring our words. My husband, and I have to give him some kudos, has been on this journey with me. He's like, okay, well, I'm happy to not have a drink either. And so I think from our kids' perspective, they're also of a different generation. They've gotten a lot of teaching in school about how alcohol and substance dependency really is problematic in the young body and the growing mind. And so they've seen it from a science perspective, but also from a more behavioral. So they're very open. And my younger son doesn't drink at all. My husband and I are from the 80s, man. That's, we were cracking open the Coors Light. But he doesn't really drink. And my older son has kind of an impartial relationship with it. So it's fascinating to watch them grow up not believing that it's a necessity, like my husband and I believed it was.
That's great to hear that the education has been different for your children in their adolescence. I had a TEDx talk titled Duped by Alcohol. And I talk about in the 80s, no, I think the early 90s, the DARE officer came into my middle school. Yeah. And I bought it hook, line, and sinker, the badge, the uniform, the gun on the side, talking about drugs. And it was a just say no to this, all the hard drugs you can think of, crack, heroin, cocaine, meth. And alcohol was never mentioned. If it was, I'm not pointing the finger elsewhere, but if it was, that would have landed somewhere. And I can only imagine being the DARE officer reviewing the curriculum to teach the kids and going, wait a second, almost every domestic violence call I go on, alcohol is part of it. Every fatal car crash I go to, alcohol is part of it. And I can't mention alcohol. It's asinine. It's asinine. So thank goodness that is changing and that paradigm is shifting. It's breaking. You're part of it. Every interview on this podcast is part of it. Like I said, the Andrew Huberman Lab podcast has been a huge part of it. And it's not stopping. Brooke, where do you see it going? Where do you see this alcohol-free movement going?
I have such hope in younger folk too, because they aren't being duped and they are answering the questions and they're refusing to be taken away by the advertising and the marketing. So I feel as though there's a force, not just awakening, but also in practicality, there's more and more things coming online. I'll give you an example, Paul. There are more alcohol-free options. And so when I go to one of our big liquor stores here, as I did, to find alcohol-free options, which is always hilarious, there was a huge section at one of our old-time liquor stores. And I thought, this is fantastic. This is the product of folks refusing to just drink the Kool-Aid.
Brooke, you're 55. Where do you envision your life going without alcohol?
It's just bright and shiny. I'm really excited because I just feel free and I just feel like my body is in a great space. I've allowed it to heal. I feel stronger than I've ever felt. I feel more clear in my head space and in my heart space. I feel as though there's just a lot more possibility. You don't even know what you don't know when you have a habit of this sort that is not helping you and healing you. So I feel very excited.
When I asked that question, I can see, Brooke, a huge smile came across your face. What's upcoming in your life without alcohol? Just a big smile on my Zoom screen. And smiles are infectious. So I'm smiling. And listeners, I hope you can put a smile on your face. Just think about Brooke and her future and your future and our future with that alcohol. And look, I want to be clear on this podcast. I'm not out to illegalize alcohol. They tried that once, prohibition didn't work. You can't go after supply without addressing demand. And that's what we're doing on this podcast. We're talking about the demand, and alcohol is not the problem. It's a symptom of a deeper unrest. And we are answering that call to explore that unrest. And that starts with awareness. Hey, something's going on. I can either continue to medicate with alcohol, continue to stuff it down, or not. And I can listen to the invitation. I love that word that you dropped. The invitation to come land at a deeper self. It doesn't mean life is all sunshine and roses, right? Brooke, I imagine you've had some rough days. Has there been a day in the last couple of months where you're like, it wasn't that bad, or man, I need a drink?
Yeah. I mean, I've had the moment because, again, I don't have new habits fully formed yet. I mean, I get through it. What do? I may take a nap even. I may go for a walk. I got to change my situation so that I don't believe that that's my only option. So I've been exercising my other options and trying those things on and finding that that works. That works. That absolutely works. And there'll be some dark days. And now I'm getting better at knowing what to do. And I can trust myself in those situations.
Yeah, and I think addiction is much more complicated than just a habit, but at some basic level, it is. So with cravings, it doesn't matter what you do, anything but drinking, running, walking, knitting, playing an instrument, anything, phoning a friend will start to build new neural pathways. I got one more question before we hit the rapid fire round. How are you feeling now? Earlier, before we hit record, you mentioned the word I'm nervous, which almost everybody has said before I hit record. You're doing great. How are you feeling right now, Brooke?
Feel great. I feel relieved. I feel grounded. And my nervousness came from wanting to support other people in knowing that there's a path forward. There is a path, that you don't have to stay stuck. I was trying to frame this in such a way that it would be of service to that message. So that's why I was so nervous. And now I feel like it's going to be what it's going to be, right? And people get what they need to get and leave behind the rest.
It's going to be great. You've rocked it. And that's why we're here almost 600 weeks straight, is because we're returning to our roots of passing along knowledge. This is storytelling. This is all it is. And that's how we've survived for millions and millions of years. We're storytelling. We're giving humans a different way. I think the better way, to be honest. Awesome job, Brooke. Well, we have hit the rapid fire round. If you could answer these questions in 5 to 10 seconds, that would be great. Are you ready?
Yes, I think so.
What's the one thing you've learned about yourself, Brooke?
That my body needs me to be an advocate for it.
What's your best sober moment?
Walking in nature and feeling all the feels.
What is your favorite alcohol-free drink?
It's called an O spritzer. That would be Pellegrino, pomegranate juice, and fresh lime juice.
Ooh, sounds delicious. What's the point of life?
To love and to be loved.
What's the best ski resort in Colorado?
Oh yeah, this is the throwdown. Winter Park.
Okay, they get a lot of snow there for sure. What has recovery made possible for you?
Seeing my future in such a way that there's lots of possibilities and very few limitations.
What parting piece of guidance can you give to someone who's listening right now? Maybe their gaze is to the ground, their shoulders are slumped forward, and there is a demeanor of, Brooke can do this, but I'm not Brooke. I don't think I can do this.
Well, I'd say be kind to yourself. Speak to yourself and hold yourself as you would a little child. Be kind.
And before we depart, Brooke, give us your own "you might need to ditch the booze if" line.
You might need to ditch the booze if you can't imagine showing up to social events without drinking.
We're in the right spot. That checks out. I had that fear too. Brooke, thank you so much for joining us and helping me on my alcohol-free journey and sharing your story with the audience. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Alcohol is artificial fun. Junk food is artificial food. Porn is artificial sex. Drugs are artificial happiness. Smoking is artificial relaxation. Celebrities are artificial and fake role models. Social media is artificial communication. Don't sacrifice the real thing for cheap dopamine. But hey, be kind to yourself. I love salt and vinegar potato chips. I love me some junk food. But I saw a meme. I wanted to relay that to you guys. I love it. I also heard this quote, when you share your pain, it cuts it in half. When you share your joy, it doubles. My, oh my, is that true? The only way you can double happiness is to share it with somebody else, and to cut your pain in half, share it with someone else. Do not struggle alone. Your addiction wants you alone. Reach out. Talk to somebody else. You're not alone. We're right here with you. I want to thank our production team for today's episode. I want to thank our editor, Natasha. We have Robin on the show notes. What is up? Chris on the mixing decks, putting it all together. What's up? Mix down.
Wiki.
Recovery Elevator, go big, because eventually we'll all go home. I love you guys.
I see you, Saber, I see you, Saber, almighty Saber, I see you, Saber, I see you, Saber, I see you, Saber, almighty Saber, I see you, Saber.